the Saltwind Protocol. The first night after the court clerk stamped our papers and called the marriage resolved, we slept inside a building that still smelled like salt and forgotten numbers. The old tide observatory stood on stilts at the edge of Honsung Inlet, half warehouse and half lighthouse annex, a place the coastal engineers abandoned when the province switched to floating seawalls and remote buoys. It was not meant for families. It was meant for data. My mother called it a fresh start anyway, because courage is easier to believe when you say it out loud. She found the fuse box and flipped switches with the confidence of someone who would rather be wrong than helpless. The fluorescence buzzed, blinked, and died. "Perfect," she said, as if darkness was a discount. She set a kettle on a single butane stove, then stared through the cracked window where the bay reflected the moon in broken shards. "Anne," she said, using my short name like a command. "We don't beg, not for money, not for pity, not for a man who left first and remembered us only when he needed an excuse." I was 14 and still carrying the aftertaste of the divorce meeting, my father smiling too politely, his new city woman waiting outside the office, and my grandmother's voice saying a daughter was an expense that could be sold later as a bride price. When Mother demanded to take me with her, they acted as if she was stealing property. Father agreed only because he wanted his new life signed and sealed without delay. He promised nothing. Mother asked for nothing. She just took my hand and walked away before her pride could crack. We arrived that afternoon on a cargo trike borrowed from Uncle Huey, the only relative who still visited without counting the minutes. The trike rattled over the dike road, past shrimp ponds shimmering with film, past stacks of driftwood bound for charcoal kilns, past houses where couples fought behind lace curtains and called it normal. At the last curve, the observatory rose from the mud like a long-legged bird. A faded sign still clung to its pole: Coastal Hydrology, Unit 3. Inside, floorboards groaned, and the air tasted of rust. The main room held a desk bolted to the planks, 3 broken chairs, and a cabinet of yellowing tide charts. A narrow corridor led to what used to be a lab. Shelves, a sink with no water, and a metal trunk stamped property of ministry. In the trunk, I found a coil of cable, a box of old batteries, and a weatherproof enclosure that would have been worth a fortune if it still sealed. Mother watched me rummage and nodded once. "Trash becomes tools," she said. "Tools become exits." That night we ate rice with canned sardines and pretended it was a feast. Mother slept near the doorway, guarding the exit from both directions. I lay under a strip of moonlight and listened to the buoy line outside sway, in slow agreement with the sea. In the pause between gusts, I heard Mother whisper to the ceiling, "We will not beg." She did not know I was awake. I did not tell her I had already learned the lesson. Begging is just another way of handing someone the knife and asking them to choose where to cut. The town of Honsung pretended it was modern because it had a solar streetlight every 10 meters and a digital billboard that played tourism ads on a loop. The ads showed smiling families eating grilled squid under fairy lights, women in linen dresses riding bicycles, and children flying kites in clean, impossible skies. In real life, the streets were soaked in brine, the gutters smelled like fish blood, and the men drank strong rice liquor and argued about whose boat deserved more fuel subsidy. The first time Mother walked to the market alone, she wore a plain black shirt and tied her hair tight, as if neatness could deflect judgment. I followed at a distance because I was ashamed of needing her, and also because I did not trust the town to keep its hands to itself. At the market gate, Auntie Lan, who sold sour tamarind candies, leaned across her table and called, "My, over here, sister." She said sister like a compliment and looked my mother up and down like an inspection. "So you really moved into that old observatory?" she continued, loud enough for 3 stalls to hear. "Brave, brave, but a woman alone. You know people talk." Mother's smile was polite in the way a closed door is polite. "Let them talk," she said. "Talking is free. If they want to charge rent for it, I'll consider." Auntie Lan laughed too hard, the laughter of someone who enjoys watching a knife dance. "Still sharp," she said, and her eyes flicked toward me. "And your girl, she's grown, pretty enough to cause trouble." The trouble arrived before noon. A man with a limp and a gold tooth, people called him Baydock, sidled into our space while Mother bargained for cooking oil. His breath carried fermented pineapple and a confidence grown from never being punished. "Sister Mai," he said, dragging the words, "living near the water is lonely, isn't it? When the tide is high, the night is long." He reached as if to touch the back of her hand. Mother stepped away and kept her voice calm. "Don't," she said. One syllable, clean as a slap. Baydock grinned. Why so angry? You're divorced, right? Free woman. We are just being friendly. His friends at the fish scale snickered. In that snicker, I heard a whole system of rules. Men could joke, women must swallow, girls must learn early that their bodies were public commentary. Heat climbed my neck. I moved forward, but Mother lifted a finger without looking at me. Stay. That finger was not a request. Mother reached into her bag and pulled out a small plastic container. She opened it and held it under his nose. Do you know what this is? She asked, sweetly. Baydock leaned in, curious. Then he recoiled, coughing. The container held shrimp paste, old, pungent, sharp enough to sting. Mother tilted it. One more step, she said, and this goes in your eyes. I won't even waste water washing it off you. The laughter in the market died like a candle pinched out. Baydock's grin twitched. He tried to recover by speaking louder. Crazy woman, he muttered. No wonder your husband left. Mother's gaze hardened. He left because he wanted a silent wife and a cheap maid, she replied. He found someone else for that. But don't worry, I'm not interested in replacing him with a man who can't even walk straight. A few women gasped. Not because she insulted Baydock, but because she broke the etiquette of pretending. In our province, men's pride was treated like a fragile bowl. Women were expected to carry it without dropping it, even when the bowl was empty. Mother set the container back in her bag and paid for the oil. As we turned away, Auntie Lon hissed, You shouldn't provoke him. Men like that hold grudges. Mother did not slow down. Good, she said. Let him. I have no patience for people who think fear is respect. On the walk home, the sun burned white on the salt flats, and I struggled to match her pace, my stomach twisted with admiration and dread. I had seen her fight words with words, but I had never seen her brandish a weapon made from something as ordinary as shrimp paste. That was my mother's gift. She could turn the kitchen into armor. At the observatory, she washed her hands carefully, then sat on the step and stared at the bay. I asked, Were you scared? She did not look at me. Of him? No, she said. Of myself, yes. Anger is like gasoline. If you spill it, one spark and everything burns. She finally met my eyes. That's why you don't answer them. Not because you're weak, but because you must choose your battles. We are here to build something, not to be consumed by every idiot with a mouth. That evening, we nailed mosquito netting over the cracked windows and patched the roof with tar strips. When the wind rattled the walls, Mother kept working. Her jaw was set, but her hands did not shake. I realized then that her sharpness was not just temper. It was a strategy she had sharpened over years of being cornered. And strategies, unlike stories, can be rewritten. Work came to my mother through a chain of small mercies. Uncle Huey mentioned the divorced lady living in the ghost building to a woman at the pier. That woman told her cousin, who handled payroll at Delta Bloom Cooperative, a new algae farm floating on modular rafts beyond the mangrove line. Delta Bloom produced algae meal for shrimp feed and experimented with seaweed film for packaging. It sounded fashionable in speeches and exhausting in practice, which meant it needed hands. Mother showed up for the interview with shoes scrubbed to look newer than they were, and a notebook full of copied terms: hazard, gloves, corrosive, rinse, emergency. The payroll clerk asked for certificates. Mother had none worth showing. She opened the notebook instead. I can read what matters, she said, and I can learn the rest. The clerk hesitated, then hired her as a general technician, cleaning filters, checking salinity, replacing pump seals, recording sensor readings, and doing whatever broke first. The work began before sunrise. Mother rode a borrowed bicycle to the pier and climbed into a skiff with workers who watched her hands, searching for softness. At the farm, the raft spread like a chessboard of green water. Sensors blinked small red eyes. Solar panels angled like black petals. Mother stepped from raft to raft without hesitation, moving as if she had been born on floating plastic. When a hose clamp snapped, she replaced it. When a pump choked, she cleared it. When a man muttered that women shouldn't work on water, she replied, "Water doesn't care what you think." While Mother worked, I attended Honsung Secondary on scholarship. The school was a concrete block painted optimistic blue, with a computer lab that had 8 functioning desktops and a pile of dead mice. In a bin of discarded boards from a government donation, I found broken machines that everyone else called trash. To me, they were a language. I spent lunch breaks soldering jumpers and scavenging parts. The lab assistant, Mr. Koa noticed my revived computers and began leaving components on my desk like quiet encouragement. The observatory became my workshop. I mounted a plank as a desk and lined it with salvaged tools. The tide charts on the wall turned into my backdrop, like a map of a world I meant to hack. Mother came home each evening with algae stains on her sleeves and exhaustion in her shoulders, but she still asked to see my homework. She no longer shouted the way she used to in our old house, because there, shouting was her only way to be heard over my father's indifference. Here, she tried to build a different kind of strength. In the second month, the school announced a provincial robotics contest. The fee was small by city standards and huge by ours. I told myself I didn't care, because wanting was dangerous. Mr. Koa caught me at the lab door and said, "You're entering. You have the hands for it." That night I told Mother, speaking fast as if speed could make the request smaller. She listened, then asked, "What would you build?" I described a low-cost drift sensor network, tiny recycled casings with cheap microcontrollers, measuring salinity and movement so shrimp farmers could predict disease risk and stop wasting feed. Mother didn't give me money like charity. She gave it like investment. "Budget," she ordered, pressing an envelope into my palm. "Timeline. What you can salvage, what you must buy. Think like an engineer." Then she added, voice low, "If anyone in that contest tries to make you small, make them regret wasting their breath." Building the first drift module took 3 nights and a mistake that made the whole observatory smell like burned sugar. I used a cheap microcontroller, a salvaged radio from a broken walkie-talkie, and a conductivity probe I made from 2 stainless screws and stubbornness. For the casing, I cut a plastic bottle and sealed the seams with melted resin scavenged from an old boat repair kit. The result looked like a toy someone forgot at the beach, but when I tested it in a bucket, the sensor readings stabilized, and the radio chirped cleanly to my receiver. I felt my chest expand as if a window opened in my ribs. Mother watched quietly, sitting on the step with her algae-stained notebook. She started copying my budget tables. Not because she needed them, but because she believed in learning by imitating structure. At the algae farm, she began asking the supervisor for scrap material: rejected seaweed film, cut-off plastic, damaged solar cells. The supervisor, a tired man named Tun, shrugged. "Take it," he said. "If you can turn trash into miracles, I'll clap." He said it as a joke, but Mother's face remained serious. She did not do miracles. She did calculations. The week before the contest, a new rumor spread through town faster than a storm warning. People said Mother was working for foreigners, that she was too friendly with the cooperative's visiting consultant, that she was making money and hiding it. Rumors in Honsuang were a kind of weather. You couldn't stop them, but you could prepare. Mother's preparation was to stay visible. She walked to the pier in daylight, carried her lunchbox openly, and returned on time. She smiled at women who greeted her, and ignored men who tried to bend her attention into flirtation. Still, the tide carried certain men back to our door. One evening, as the sky turned copper and the bay smelled of rain, Baydock showed up at the observatory with 2 friends and a bag of oranges. He called from below the steps, voice loud enough to stage itself as generosity. "Sister Mai," he announced, "I brought fruit. For the child. You are alone. You need neighbors." His friends chuckled, leaning on their motorbikes as if they owned our air. Mother stepped onto the threshold and did not invite them in. "Oranges are cheap," she said. "Neighbors are expensive. Which one are you trying to be?" Baydock's grin flickered. He lifted the bag higher. "Just kindness," he claimed. "Also, I heard your girl is going to a contest in the city. A girl traveling is dangerous. She needs a man to escort her. I can drive." My stomach twisted. The offer was a hook, barbed. Mother's gaze sharpened. "My daughter doesn't need your escort," she said. "She needs you to keep your mouth shut." Baydock's friends laughed, but it was the wrong kind of laugh. The laugh that comes before pushing. Baydock took a step up. "Don't be rude," he warned. "You have no husband, no brothers. Who will protect you?" Before Mother answered, a sound rose from the bay. The deep thrum of an engine and the slap of hull on water. A small dive boat approached the observatory dock, its cabin light swinging. A man jumped onto the planks with easy balance, carrying a coil of rope over one shoulder. He wore a faded navy jacket and had the kind of posture that suggested he had spent years on decks where mistakes killed. He glanced at Baydock, then at Mother, and raised an eyebrow in question. Mother stiffened, then relaxed 0.5 millimeter. "Mr. Dung," she said, and to my surprise, she sounded almost neutral. The man nodded. The cooperative asked me to check the intake line, he replied. His voice was calm, neither friendly nor hostile. He looked at the oranges. Are these for the rafts? He asked Baydok. Because if you're coming to steal algae again, I'll report you. Baydok's face tightened. Who are you? He snapped. Mr. Dung's expression did not change. Someone who knows how to tie knots that don't come undone, he said. And someone who knows what currents do to bodies. His tone made the word bodies sound like an official category, not a threat, and that made it worse. Baydok's friends shifted. Their bravado depended on being the only men in a space. The presence of an outsider, especially one who looked like he belonged to rules, bent their confidence. Baydok threw the bag of oranges onto the step as if to mark territory, then spat to the side. Fine, he said, but don't think you can hide forever in a ghost house. He turned his bike around, and his friends followed, engines snarling into the dusk. After they left, the wind returned, and the observatory creaked like an old jaw chewing. Mother stared at the oranges, then kicked the bag lightly. Waste, she muttered. Mr. Dung crouched, examined the dock cleats, and began securing the line as if he was finishing a job he started years ago. I watched him with the suspicion any girl learns early. Men who appear at convenient times are either angels or collectors. Mother spoke first. You didn't need to interfere, she told him, sharp but controlled. Mr. Dung shrugged. I needed to tie this line anyway, he said. And I don't like hearing men talk as if women are stray dogs. He looked at me briefly. Contest, he added. What kind? Robotics, I said, surprised my voice did not wobble. He nodded once, as if robotics was as normal as fishing. Build something that survives water, he advised. Water is honest. Then he stood and moved toward the bay, leaving behind the quiet sense of a door closing gently, rather than slamming. That night, Mother peeled the oranges and placed slices on a plate without comment. She did not thank Mr. Dung, and she did not mention Baydok again, but when I glanced at her hands, I noticed they no longer trembled. She had been afraid, not of men, but of being alone against them. The fear eased when she remembered that alliances exist outside marriage, and strength can arrive wearing unexpected jackets. The next morning, Mother woke before dawn and handed me a small cloth pouch. Inside was a USB drive. What's this? I asked. A backup of your code, she said, and your diagrams. If your laptop dies, you don't. She touched my forehead with 2 fingers, a habit from my childhood when fever scared her. Go win, she ordered softly. And come back. The contest was held in a provincial innovation hall that smelled like new paint and old anxiety. The building had glass walls, glossy floors, and air conditioning so cold it made my teeth hurt. Teams arrived with matching shirts and printed banners. Some carried polished robots in foam cases, the way people carry newborns. Our team consisted of me, a shy boy named Kwang who could code faster than he could speak, and a girl named Ni who knew how to present without apologizing for taking space. We wore the school's faded uniform shirts and borrowed safety goggles. Mother stood in the hallway, not inside the hall because she did not want to bother the officials. But I saw her through the glass, watching as if her gaze could anchor me. Our project table looked small among the others. We set up my drift modules in a shallow demo tank and ran the receiver on a patched laptop. When the judge approached, a man with a badge that said Engineer Advisor, he glanced at our recycled casings and raised a skeptical eyebrow. Budget project? He asked. Annie smiled brightly. Accessible project, she corrected, for small farmers, not for rich exhibitions. I demonstrated the module's ability to map microcurrents and salinity gradients. Kwang explained the packet protocol. The judge nodded, then asked the question I feared. Why would anyone adopt this when there are commercial sensor buoys? I swallowed. Ni opened her mouth, but I spoke first. Because commercial buoys cost more than a farmer's boat, I said, and because our modules can be repaired with a knife and a heat gun. I held up one of the casings. If something breaks, you don't throw it away. You fix it. The judge's expression shifted slightly. He looked past our table toward the hall's banner that declared innovation for a green future. Fixing is green, I added, and to my own surprise, my voice sounded steady. We did not win first prize. A team from the city brought a sleek robot arm that sorted plastic waste with computer vision and impressed the sponsors. We won second. which came with a smaller scholarship and a meeting with a panel of cooperative leaders. When they announced our name, Mother clapped through the glass so hard her palms reddened. I felt a hot, humiliating surge behind my eyes, the kind that comes when a person's sacrifice suddenly has a stage light. After the awards, a woman in a pale blazer approached Mother. She introduced herself as Dr. Rojas, a materials consultant from a foreign-funded coastal resilience program. Her Vietnamese had a careful accent, as if she was tasting each tone. "Your daughter's sensor idea has potential," she told Mother, "but I'm more curious about you." Mother stiffened. "Me?" she asked, suspicious. "Doctor." Rojas smiled. "Someone told me you reorganized Delta Bloom's maintenance logs and reduced downtime," she said. "That's not common." Mother's expression tightened. "I just did my job," she said. Dr. Rojas shook her head. "Many people just do their job by doing the minimum," she replied. "You did more. Would you consider joining a pilot program? We're testing seaweed film reinforced with rice husk fiber. We need a supervisor who can read data and manage people." The word supervisor landed like a coin in water, heavy, unexpected. Mother did not answer immediately. She looked at me, then back at Dr. Rojas. "Will it pay?" she asked, blunt. Dr. Rojas laughed softly, not offended. "Yes," she said. "More than line work, and it includes training." On the ride home, Mother did not speak much. She sat in the back of the bus with her arms crossed, watching rice fields slide past like green pages turning. At one point she asked me, "When you spoke to that judge, were you scared?" I nodded. She hummed. "Then you're paying attention," she said. "Fear is a sign you care. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is fear that obeys." The next week, Mother started the pilot program. Her schedule grew harsher. Day shifts at the farm, evening training sessions in town, late-night reading under a lamp powered by a salvaged solar cell. She learned terms like tensile strength, polymer chain, and heat seal curve. She practiced writing emails in English on an ancient phone. I watched her transform in slow increments, like a person building muscle in places she did not know existed. Then the cooperative's crisis arrived, wearing the face of paperwork. A notice from the district office ordered the observatory area to be reclaimed for public safety due to structural risk. It was signed by Vice Chairman Look, a man known for smiling with his teeth while his eyes stayed cold. The notice gave us 14 days to vacate. Mother read it once, then again. Her jaw tightened. "He wants the land," she said, "not safety." The observatory sat on a prime stretch of inlet with a view of the bay perfect for a boutique pier or a tourist cafe. Look had a cousin in construction. Everyone knew how these things worked. The poor were cleared, the rich built, and the government called it development. "We can't fight the district," I whispered. Mother folded the notice carefully and placed it in her notebook like a specimen. "We can," she said, "but not with shouting." Her gaze shifted to the tide charts on the wall, to the sensors blinking in the trunk, to my drift modules lined up like small loyal fish. "We fight with proof," she said, "and with usefulness." She marched to Delta Bloom and requested a meeting with the board. The board, nervous about their own shrinking margins, listened as she laid out a plan. Use the observatory as a resilience demonstration site, install tide sensors, run workshops for farmers, host visiting officials. If the observatory became public benefit, eviction would be politically awkward. "Vice Chairman Look likes cameras," she said, "so we give him cameras pointed at something that makes him look bad if he bulldozes it." The board hesitated until Dr. Rojas backed Mother, pointing out that international grants favored visible community infrastructure. Money is the universal translator. The board approved. Mother came home with a stack of forms and an exhausted smile. "We have 60 days," she said. "Not 14. I exhaled as if I had been holding my breath since the divorce. But Vice Chairman Look did not enjoy being outmaneuvered by a woman with no title. His retaliation arrived not in daylight, but in tides. 2 nights later, the intake line at the algae farm was found cut, paddle wheels stalled. The raceways turned stagnant. Shrimp feed production halted. The cooperative lost a week's revenue in one morning. Rumors spread again. Maybe the divorced woman brought bad luck. Maybe her anger poisoned the water. Maybe she should leave before worse happens. Mother returned that evening, algae stains darker than usual. She did not sit. She did not eat. She pulled out her notebook and began writing a list. "We find who did it," she said, and we make sure they can't cut us again. The sea does not announce sabotage. It only amplifies consequences. Delta Bloom's intake line ran under a muddy channel where mangroves twisted their roots like fingers. Cutting it was easy for anyone with a knife and a boat, and tracing the culprit was hard because water erases footprints. When the intake was found sliced clean at 2:17 during slack tide, the town's rumor weather shifted again. Maybe the divorced woman brought bad luck. Maybe her anger poisoned the water. Maybe she should leave before worse happened. Mother refused to be framed by superstition. She demanded access to the sensor logs, and I pulled the data into my laptop. The flow drop was sharp, not gradual. One of my drift modules near the channel recorded a brief burst of interference around the same minute. "Someone passed here," I said. "Someone confident," Mother answered. "Mr. Dung, the diver. Delta Bloom used for underwater repairs, inspected the hose and surfaced holding the frayed end. Blade," he confirmed. "Not accident. Strong anchors became our response." Mother proposed a protective cage over the intake and motion-triggered lights powered by salvaged solar cells. The board grumbled until she showed a spreadsheet comparing downtime losses to preventive cost. Numbers translated what Pride refused to hear. They approved. Then the weather turned political. A tropical depression strengthened in the Gulf, and Vice Chairman Look, who had already tried to evict us from the observatory with a safety notice, scheduled a shoreline inspection for the day after predicted landfall. If the cooperative's rafts broke loose, he could blame unsafe structures and call bulldozers public service. Mother treated the bulletin like a countdown. We deployed my drift modules in a mesh network around the cooperative, anchored to mangrove roots, relaying current speed and wave impact to a receiver at the observatory. I wrote a dashboard that displayed stress levels on raft connectors. Mother used it to prioritize reinforcement crews. The sky turned the color of bruised metal. Wind arrived in punches. Waves in the inlet rose and fell with angry speed. When the dashboard flashed red for the outer raft, Mother and Mr. Dung launched the skiff anyway. A connector snapped with a crack like bone, and the raft broke loose, tilting its solar panels like sails. It drifted toward the mangrove gap that led straight into open sea, threatening to drag other modules with it. I rerouted the network to prioritize tracking near the gap and yelled coordinates over the phone until the call died in static. Workers who should have evacuated ran to the dock when they saw our emergency lights. We ran a thick cable from a truck winch to the dock post and out to the raft line. Mr. Dung looped the rope on the slick platform. Mother steadied the skiff and shouted commands that cut through wind like blades. The winch engaged, the cable tightened, and the raft slowed, resisting the sea's pull. Mud sucked at boots, engines screamed, and men who loved jokes about women suddenly became silent and useful. Vice Chairman Look arrived under an umbrella to watch, phone raised like a weapon. Mother saw him and didn't flinch. When the raft finally stabilized, she walked straight toward him, soaked and unbreakable. "You wanted a disaster," she said, voice quiet enough to be terrifying. "You didn't get one. We have logs, timestamps, and interference records. If you keep playing games, I'll hand the grant auditors a story you won't enjoy." Look's smile cracked. He left without a speech. The storm raged through the night, but the farm held. The observatory groaned and leaked, but it stood. At dawn, the sky lightened to exhausted gray. Mother sat on the step, shivering, and finally let herself breathe. Mr. Dung handed her hot ginger tea. Their fingers brushed. Mother did not grab, and she did not retreat. She simply accepted help, like a person learning that survival can be selective, not solitary. She looked at my laptop screen and murmured, "Usefulness is protection." The district could not evict a brochure. That became Mother's favorite joke, told with a grin that startled people who remembered her only as sharp. The observatory officially became a pilot site, which meant officials visited, shook hands, and took photos beside the tide sensors, while pretending they understood the graphs. It also meant we received a small grant for repairs. We replaced the worst floorboards, reinforced the stilts, and installed a rainwater tank. The building stopped being a ghost house and started being a stubborn house. With success came new pressures. Delta Bloom's overseas contract required consistent quality, and quality required discipline. Mother managed shifts, trained workers, and dealt with arguments that flared like dry grass. Some men resented taking instructions from her. A few tried passive sabotage, working slower, forgetting protocols, spreading whispers that she was too close to Dr. Rojas or to Mr. Dung. Mother confronted each problem like a knot. She did not yank, she untied. She documented mistakes. She posted standards. She praised publicly when praise was earned, and corrected privately when correction would not become theater. Over time, even the resentful men learned that fighting her was exhausting and pointless. One evening, Mother came home with a new item. A second-hand laptop, scratched but functional. She placed it on my desk. "For you," she said. I stared. "We can't afford," I began. Mother waved a hand. "I afforded it," she interrupted. "And I'm tired of you typing code on a machine that sounds like it's dying." She paused, then added, softer. "Also, if you work with real engineers, you need real tools. It's not vanity. It's respect for your own work." I touched the laptop lid as if it was fragile. "Thank you," I whispered. Mother tilted her head. "Don't thank me like a charity worker," she said. "Thank me like a partner." Then she handed me a document, an application form for a national science scholarship. "We fill this," she said, "tonight." As we worked through the form, the observatory's radio crackled. The Resilience Hub had been assigned a community emergency channel. Static hissed, then a voice. "Unit 3, do you copy?" It was the harbor master, breathless. "There's a boat adrift near the mangrove gap. No lights. Might be children." Mother snapped upright. "Coordinates?" she demanded. The harbor master rattled them off. I pulled up my drift network map. The last module near the gap showed a small anomaly, an object interrupting current flow. "It's here," I said, pointing. Mother grabbed her rain jacket. "Call Mr. Dung," she ordered, "and bring the receiver." We ran to the dock where the cooperative skiff waited for emergencies. Mr. Dung arrived within minutes, helmet in hand, face tight with focus. "Kids?" he asked. Mother nodded once. "We go," she said. The skiff cut through dark water. The mangroves loomed like shadows with teeth. My receiver beeped as it triangulated the anomaly. Ahead, a small wooden fishing boat bobbed, its bow stuck in roots. 2 children huddled inside, crying. Their father had taken them out to check crab traps, and then passed out drunk, leaving them drifting when the tide turned. The father lay in the stern, breathing shallow, smelling of liquor and regret. Mr. Dung boarded the boat carefully and secured a tow line. Mother climbed in too, ignoring the children's sobbing as she checked for injuries. Her voice softened for them in a way it rarely did. "You're okay," she said. "Hold my sleeve. Don't move." The children clutched her like she was the first solid thing in a watery world. We towed the boat back to the pier where the harbor master waited with police. The father woke enough to shout insults, embarrassed. "Mind your own business," he yelled at Mother. "Who asked you?" The police rolled their eyes. Mother's expression hardened. She said nothing to him. She turned to the children and placed a piece of candy in each small palm. "Next time," she told them gently, "if you're scared, shout, even if adults tell you to be quiet." As we walked back to the observatory, Mr. Dung glanced at Mother. "You could have left it," he said. "Let the harbor deal with it." Mother's voice was steady. "If we build a hub, it must be a hub," she replied. "Not a signboard." That rescue became another story in town, and for once, it was not a story that tried to smear her. People started coming to the observatory for practical reasons. To ask about storm warnings, to learn how to read tide charts, to charge phones during power cuts, to attend workshops about water quality. Mother became the person others turned to not because she was married, but because she was capable. In a place where women's worth was measured by who claimed them, she became valuable by claiming herself. One afternoon, Vice Chairman Look showed up again, alone, without umbrella. He wore a smile that looked glued on. "Coordinator Mai," he greeted, using her title as if he had invented it. Mother did not smile back. Look gestured toward the bay. "The district is planning a tourism upgrade," he said. "We need cooperation. Maybe your hub can align." Mother leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Align with what?" she asked. Look's eyes flicked around, checking for listeners. "There's an investor," he said quietly. "They want a pier, a cafe, some boat tours. The observatory land is attractive." Mother's laugh was short. "You again," she said. Look's smile tightened. "It's development," he insisted. "You can be part of it. You're smart. We can find a way." Mother pointed at the sensors, the charts, the kids drawing tide lines on the chalkboard inside. This is development, she said, and it doesn't require pushing poor people off land they repaired with their own hands. Luke's face hardened. You're making this personal, he said. Mother's voice turned colder. You made it personal when you assumed I could be bullied, she replied. Now you're discovering your assumption was expensive. He stared at her, then at me, perhaps hoping to shame her through her child. It didn't work. He left without another word. His shoes splashed with mud. I watched his back and felt something like relief mixed with anger. The world was full of men who used paperwork as weapons. My mother had learned to use it as a shield and a sword. That night, Mother sat with a stack of scholarship forms and said, "You know what the best revenge is?" I shrugged. Success? I guessed. She shook her head. Joy, she said. Success can still taste like bitterness if you do it only to prove someone wrong. Joy is when you stop needing their eyes. She looked at me, and for the first time in years, her gaze held softness without fear. I want you to win things, she said, but I also want you to laugh. I did not know how to promise laughter, so I promised effort. It was the only language I spoke fluently then. The scholarship results arrived on a humid afternoon when the bay smelled of seaweed and diesel. A courier on a motorbike delivered an envelope with a national emblem. My hands shook as I tore it open. The letter inside announced that I had been awarded a full scholarship to a science high school in the city, with boarding covered and mentorship opportunities at the Coastal Institute. For a moment, the words did not mean anything. They were just symbols. Then Mother read over my shoulder, and her breath caught. She pressed her fingers to her lips, as if to keep a sound from escaping. I expected her to yell, to celebrate loudly, to call Auntie Lon and gloat. Instead, she sat down on the step, shoulders trembling. Tears slid down her cheeks without permission. I'm sorry, she whispered, as if crying was an offense. I knelt in front of her. Don't be sorry, I said. This is ours. Mother wiped her face with the back of her hand and laughed through tears. Ours, she repeated. Yes, not his, not theirs. Ours. That evening we cooked a feast with what we had. Grilled mackerel, morning glory, and a small cake bought from the town bakery. The cake was slightly lopsided, the icing too sweet, but Mother insisted on lighting a candle. You didn't have birthdays before, she said. We fixed that too. She made me blow out the candle, then she cut the cake into uneven slices. When I teased her about the slices, she snapped. Life is uneven. Eat it. And then she smiled, and the smile made the observatory feel like a home more than any repaired wall. At dusk, Mr. Doong arrived with a cardboard box. Inside was a compact waterproof toolkit, multimeter, crimpers, heat shrink, and a set of marine-grade connectors. For your boarding school, he said. Awkward. City buildings still leak, he added, as if that was the reason. I thanked him, embarrassed by the gift. Mother watched him with a careful expression that I had learned meant she was considering trust. After he left, Mother stood at the edge of the dock and stared at the darkening water. He's a good man, I said, testing the sentence like a small stone thrown into a pond. Mother's shoulders lifted in a silent shrug. Good men exist, she replied. So do good days. I don't need to capture either to appreciate them. She paused. But I also don't want to live like a closed fist forever. Her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. The next week, as we prepared my boarding supplies, my father tried again. This time he did not come to the observatory. He called. His number flashed on my phone, and my stomach tightened. I answered because I wanted the power of choosing, not the habit of avoidance. Anne, Father said, voice too cheerful. I heard you got into a science school. Congratulations. I always knew you'd do well. I said nothing. Silence is a mirror. He cleared his throat. Listen, he continued. Your stepmother and I are considering moving to a larger apartment. Maybe you could stay with us on weekends. It's better than that. That shack, the word shack hit like a slap. Anger rose, hot and familiar. But then I remembered Mother's lesson. Choose your battle. I spoke calmly. It's not a shack, I said. It's a hub. It's our home. Father sighed as if dealing with childish stubbornness. You're still young, he said. You don't understand how society works. People judge. They will judge your mother. They will judge you. A proper family, I interrupted. Society judged her when she stayed quiet, I said. Society judged her when she spoke. Society judged her when she worked. Society will judge anyway, so we might as well live honestly. Father's tone sharpened. Who taught you to talk like that? He snapped. I almost laughed. The person who actually raised me, I replied. Then I hung up before my voice could shake. My hands trembled afterward. Not from fear, but from the strange relief of cutting a rope that had been strangling me for years. On the morning I left for the city, Mother woke before dawn and cooked noodles with egg, the kind she used to cook when I was sick. She packed extra chili oil in a jar and tucked notes into my bag. Emergency numbers, bus routes, a list of things to ask if I felt lost. She also slipped in a printed photo, the one taken at the robotics contest, where I stood holding the drift module and Mother clapped behind the glass. On the back, she had written in careful English, "You can do hard things." At the bus station, she stood too straight. Her eyes scanned the crowd like a soldier guarding a border. When my bus arrived, she handed me the pouch containing the USB backup, now joined by a second drive labeled Home Logs. "Data," she said. "Always keep data." Then she pressed her palm to my cheek. Her voice cracked slightly. "Don't become hard," she said. "Become strong. There's a difference." I boarded. Through the window, I watched her shrink into the station crowd, her red jacket a small flame in gray morning. The bus pulled away, and the town dissolved into rice fields and water channels. I expected to feel free. Instead, I felt a new ache. The ache of leaving behind the person who made freedom possible. In the city, the science school was huge, loud, and full of people who talked fast. I learned quickly, failed quickly, and learned again. Every weekend, I called Mother and described my days, and she listened as if the city was a story she could build brick by brick through my voice. She told me about Delta Bloom's expanding orders, about the observatory workshops, about the kids who now came to draw tide charts for fun. She also told me about herself, slowly, cautiously. She started taking evening classes in management. She began sleeping a little longer. She laughed more. One weekend, she admitted something that startled me. "I went for tea with Mr. Doone," she said, as if confessing a crime. "Just tea." I grinned into the phone. "Was it good?" I asked. Mother huffed. "The tea was bitter," she said. "He said bitter is honest." I could hear the smile hiding in her voice. "I told him honesty isn't enough," she added. "He needs to learn sweetness too." Months passed. When I returned for the new year, the observatory had a small sign painted neatly. Honsung Tide and Learning Station. Inside, there was a whiteboard covered in equations, a shelf of donated books, and a corner where my drift modules sat in upgraded casings, ready for deployment. Mother stood in the doorway, hands on hips, eyes bright. "Welcome home," she said. I realized then that home was not a place where nothing